What's up, Canada? Great Northern Discussions. I'm your host, Kevin Tucker, and we got a real special episode coming up here next with Cody Battershill from from Canada Action, but you may recognize him from I Love Canada Oil and Gas. We've got all these products right here, and we're going to be doing a prize pack giveaway. So after the episode, if you want to head over to my YouTube, click follow, and then in the comments section, we want you to list what energy has done for yourself and for your family and how it benefits us. We're trying to make a push for energy, especially with an election looming. So head over to my YouTube page after the episode. Like I said, you'll get a hat, a t-shirt, and a hoodie for the 5 best comments. And then you can text me after and we'll figure out how to get you your swag. And as always, thanks to Lone Star Directional for sponsoring Great Northern Discussions. How does a real estate agent find himself advocating for energy?
That's a great question. I think a real estate agent meets a lot of people and over time realizes, hey, I work in real estate. I'm helping people buy and sell homes and find somewhere to live, put a roof over their families' heads.
Yeah.
But they realize that, in fact, what do all those clients, what do all those people do for work?
Right.
They work in resources and energy and in a broad range of industries, but there's such a high concentration in our natural resource sector, in Canadian oil and gas, Alberta's oil and gas industry, especially Calgary. And you start to realize over time, as a Canadian, even though I don't work in it directly, we all work in it and benefit from it indirectly.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about the winter when it's minus 40. It keeps us alive. It's our heat, it's our heat, it's our insulation, it's our homes, it's thousands of products that we all use every day. Let's also just talk in the summer. When we're eating food, half of the world's food is currently grown with fertilizer derived from natural gas.
Oh.
So when you think about our actual basic needs, and then you think about Canadian economic prosperity, whether people like it or not, are informed enough to appreciate it or not, realize it or not, have ever seen a rig, have ever been to the oil sands, we all work in and benefit from Canada's oil and gas, food, mining, forestry, and energy industries at large.
As a whole.
Natural resources, it's what really Canada's built on. It's our natural economic strength and something we should all be proud of. Something I'm very proud of.
Yeah, obviously.
Which is why I've been working at this for so long.
Well, yeah, you mentioned the word informed, whether we're informed or not, and that's obviously what you're big on, and that's what drove you to, I love Canadian oil and gas, I love Canadian pipelines, I love Canadian forestry, and just for people, you can go to canadaaction.com or Instagram. You guys can look through just as a tremendous source of information on anything energy. So, and that started, you started that up around 2010 and how did that come about?
Yeah. So, I'll give you the origin story first. So I got into real estate in 2004, 2005.
And you're good. You're good. I mean, if people can look you real estate, you're good. You're a good real estate agent.
Well, thank you. We try really hard.
Yeah.
Myself, my partner, Jordan, and then we have a couple other partners that work with us on our team. We have a team of 5, and I've been a realtor for 20 years.
Holy shit.
Going on 21 years. It's been remarkable. I've been involved at the Calgary Real Estate Board, on the Charitable Foundation, on the Critical Illness Foundation. I was a former instructor. Lots of involvement there, and then transitioned a lot of that time into Canada Action. Used to also do a lot of stuff with children and youth serving organizations like Little Warriors, Children's Miracle Network, bunch of other things. But so very passionate about our community. Yeah. And where I saw that sort of evolve into in terms of our community was starting in real estate, meeting all these amazing people from all over the country, to be honest, moving here for the Alberta advantage. Yeah. And I started to realize, again, even though my parents didn't work in oil and gas, even though I didn't work in oil and gas, I had no experience in oil and gas, I just started to recognize that we all win when we work together. We all benefit from oil and gas. And even, I mean, at a technical level, like, for example, in the oil sands, these are leases.
Yeah.
that the government owns and the government leases it to companies to develop.
Sure. Yeah.
So the taxpayer, the citizens, because who owns the government? The citizens.
Yeah.
So we are the government. We elect in our democracy representatives. They go, they lease it out. And I just realized that, we were all benefiting. Now, fast forward 2010, I've been a realtor for approximately 5 years, and I'm in Vancouver, and I'm walking down Robson Street. I'm visiting Vancouver.
Yeah.
Seeing a friend. I don't know what I was doing. But I'm in Vancouver. I'm walking down Robson Street, and here you have Lush Cosmetics
Yeah.
saying
Right.
that we need to stop the tar sands.
Yeah. Tar sands.
We need to
They like using
stop
that.
it.
Yeah.
And I know from personal experience that I have many clients who work very, very hard, flying in,
Yeah.
working 7, 10, 14, I don't know, maybe even 21 day
21 day. Yeah.
stretches.
That's the max. Yeah. 2
and
on,
coming
1
back.
off. 2 on, 2 off. Yeah.
And they're away from their families. They're working 12 hours a day or however long. It's very hard work. It's very remote. It's very cold in the winter.
Oh, yeah.
There is a lot of planning, logistics that goes into that, flying in, being away from your family. And I just said, you want to stop it? Well, what about all these people that I know? And
That affects me. Yeah. That affects
all of us.
All of us. Yeah.
And so I started doing some research. Okay, global oil demand is growing. Why do you only want to stop Canada? Why is Lush Cosmetics only trying to shut down oil production in Canada when Lush Cosmetics has stores in pretty much every other major oil producer in the world?
Right. Yeah. That's the hypocrisy. Yeah.
Now, when we talk about Lush Cosmetics, let's say Lush Cosmetics is targeting cosmetic products, soaps. So let's say their main audience would be women. Was Lush Cosmetics also running these campaigns in countries where there wasn't the same level of equity and and balance on a women, female rights and freedom
Right.
type, sort of train of thought? And the
Mm-hmm.
answer was no. So here's Lush Cosmetics. They want to shut down Canada. Everything in that store is made possible or made with oil and gas as well.
Yeah.
Like
That stuff's finally getting out there.
like,
People are starting to
yeah.
understand it. It's in everything, but
So I started a Twitter account, Cody
Yeah.
in Calgary, my personal account. It's kind of, I don't use it a lot
Yeah.
anymore, but started that, and I started like talking to Lush Cosmetics, and I was like, wow, why are they allowed to spread such disinformation with no balance, no context, no perspective, no facts?
no.
And also at the time, why was the industry doing nothing?
Yep.
It was so slow and so reactive.
Yep.
Now, I will say this. At the time, social media was new.
Yeah, it was
The
new.
iPhone was new. Facebook was new. So all of a sudden you have this movement to shut down the tar sands, and as an extension, for example, Keystone XL.
Yeah.
So 2009, Obama was talking about how amazing Keystone was for Canadian-American energy security and integration. 2010, all of a sudden, Obama's talking about, whoa, we might not
giving
want to
in.
build Keystone XL
Yeah.
because of
Climate.
whatever.
Whatever
Okay.
it was. Yep.
Now, one of the lead protesters, one of the lead people for Keystone XL protest, Bill McKibben of 350.org, he was in Rolling Stone talking about how Keystone XL was a symbolic protest for the climate movement, and he acknowledged that his own carbon footprint was larger than many Indian villages, many small towns in developing countries.
Yeah.
Which I mean also is kind of missing the whole point about how we live and how people in other parts of the world live, and they simply just want to have clean water, access to food, maybe an education, maybe some healthcare.
Yeah, we're leaving them behind.
We're leaving them behind.
Yeah.
So there was this pipeline protest movement that started,
I remember that.
and at the time, top suppliers of heavy oil to the United States, Saudi Arabia, Canada, Ecuador, Brazil, Mexico, Venezuela, all these green groups only wanted to block Canadian
Shut down Canada only.
oil.
Yeah, that's right.
Even though
Yep.
and we have to be conscientious of what we talk about with Bill C-59.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we should mention that bill for sure.
Even though people could go and do their own research and look back in time at how Canada has consistently ranked over the last 15 years on any metric that we would say we care about in Canada or as a Western democracy, from social progress to environmental performance and rankings to Women, Peace and Security Index to the world's best cities to live and all of the metrics that go into creating that, our contribution to global security and, you know, there's just so many rankings, the transparency rankings, and there's so many things you could go look at for how Canada would rank versus these other suppliers, but it was only Canada.
Yeah, and that was unearthed by Vivian Krause. I remember she did a big expose on, well, the lobbying groups that were funded in the States that were trying to suppress
I'll say Vivian Krause. I consider Vivian Krause a friend. I think Vivian Krause is a great person. I have all the respect in the world for Vivian Krause.
Yeah. Good.
And
yeah, sure.
Vivian put a lot of time and effort into tracking the dollars and cents behind this stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, we even found a PR company that was bragging as a case study that they had created numerous social media accounts that they were all running. So this is the definition of something that's astroturf. It's not grassroots. It's astroturf. It's masquerading as grassroots.
Yeah.
They were bragging about bragging about blocking pipelines, creating discontent, spreading disinformation.
Yeah.
And again, so they're trying to block Keystone XL. They don't care about any tankers coming into California, any tankers coming into the United States from those other suppliers, and how those other suppliers fit into their pretend stated goals of protecting this and this and this.
Yeah.
Hollywood gets involved, so I'm like tweeting at Mark Ruffalo. He replied a couple times.
Did he?
Yeah. You know, Hollywood's up there, of course. Hollywood wants to shut down Leo mistook a Chinook for some...
Yeah, he did mistake a Chinook for global warming or what climate change or whatever you want to call it.
And in a lot of those, in a lot of those news stories as well, is Mark Ruffalo thinking about the Indigenous communities that are advancing and owning these LNG facilities?
No, they don't, though. Yeah,
is Leo thinking about hundreds and thousands of Indigenous peoples that are working on these projects? All of the different deals that have been done and more should be done for partnerships and ownership and collaboration. And no, of course not.
No.
So I saw the protest. I started a Twitter account.
Like, that's it.
And I was blown away at the organization, the level of disinformation, the fact it was only against Canada.
Yeah, which was the strangest part that we all kind of scratch our heads at. Why is everybody coming after just Canada?
Almost like we're a soft target.
Yeah, easy target or something.
And some people could say that when you block Canadian pipelines, you have more supply than capacity to transport it. Therefore, there's going to be larger discounts on what you can sell it for.
Sure, yep.
It's a supply-demand kind of equation with infrastructure and pipelines. At one point, we were selling our oil. At one point, Canadian oil was the cheapest in the entire world.
And I remember that, yeah.
But we can go again and look back at all those rankings to see how Canada has ranked all those years. We know where Canada sits on that ranking chart versus the world's other top oil and gas producers.
Yeah.
So there's this fundamental disconnect. You want to protect the environment, but you only want to shut down Canada. You want to stop Northern Gateway. That pipeline did have more than 70% support from the Indigenous communities on the route.
That was a big loss.
Big loss.
Gateway, huge loss. Yeah.
Gateway was to a port facility where we could have loaded very large crude carriers at port, making the economics much stronger. Trans Mountain got built, but maybe it should have been built sooner. Maybe it shouldn't have cost so much. Maybe we should have had an environment in this country where private developers didn't want to leave.
That's right. Yeah, and they had to walk away, Kinder Morgan, because the cost was just too high.
Thank goodness it got built.
Sure.
But at what the environmental groups environmental groups that are trying to shut down Canada don't want to talk about or won't talk about is when you delay a project, when you cause cost overruns on a project, it ultimately only hurts Canadian taxpayers.
Yep.
Because the costs have to be recouped before further economic benefits flow down to taxpayers and to communities and to governments.
Mm-hmm.
So you're only hurting Canadians.
Yeah.
And in 2010, oil demand globally was about 91 million barrels a day.
Mm-hmm.
And what was one of the main reasons why we don't want to build pipelines, according to Bill McKibben, Greenpeace, all these groups? We don't need it. Peak oil. Oil.
Well, that's what they kept saying.
Oil demand's going to peak. We don't need it. We don't need Canada. Why build a pipeline that's going to run 30 years?
We're not going to need it. It's just going to run out. Why build
we're not going to need it at all,
We're going to be off oil.
Yeah. We're going 100% wind and solar.
Yeah.
And since then, fast forward.
Rising.
Oil demand today is about 104, 105.
Yeah.
Oil demand on every credible forecast is going higher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oil demand in 2040 might be the same as it is today.
Yeah, well, 104 million barrels a day or something was the
105.
forecast.
There was a forecast 5 years ago that said even if every new vehicle sold was an electric vehicle, the increase in petrochemical demand alone, plus what's happening in other parts of the world on consumption, would mean that oil demand in that scenario would still be the same as it was in approximately 2013, 2014, about 95 million barrels a day.
Mm-hmm.
So where should the 95 million barrels come from?
Yeah.
As a Canadian, I'd really love to see Canada supplying, benefiting, maximizing our market share.
Yeah.
Getting the best possible price. It's smart to maximize the value of your exports.
Yeah.
Natural resources are like 50% of our country's exports. Exports help us pay the bills for all the things we import. Exports to support the value of our dollar.
Yep.
Exports do a lot of things. Exports are very important to our country's economy.
Well, no question. And it's just been so suppressed over the last 10 years. And we're happy it's being talked about now because, like it or not, this tariff war is affecting us and forcing governments to look inward. I think it's all a smokescreen still, and we can get into some of that. But I wanted to circle back real quick, and then I want to talk about some of your information that you put out there. I just wanted to circle back. You touched on the the information, which we're talking about the Competition Act, and then it was amended C-59, which for people who don't understand limits producers and people in resource sector. They call it green washing. We call it green hushing. But essentially, you can't talk about your achievements as it relates to environment, and the purpose of the bill was to go after people who were lying about, successes from an environmental standpoint. But what has happened is they put this act in, the bill passed, I think it was 2020, June of 2020, I think, the amendments. And then, so now, because I've gone back and forth to look, because I used to look up at all to show friends, look at what the Cenovus oil sands looked like. Here's it reclaimed.
Yep.
And I have pictures of that we can put up. You can't get them off the websites anymore because all these energy companies had to scrub their websites. So for instance, ConocoPhillips had an internal program called Faster Forests. And they had planted 5 million, that's a fact. They planted 5 million trees up to 2019 as part of their Faster Forest project.
Yep.
You can dig and find it, but it's not on their new website anymore. They had to drop it. And Cenovus even came out with, they looked up their sustainability. Every energy producer, if people want to look, you can look up energy producers. They have a sustainability on the menu.
Yep.
And a lot of people now, Cenovus just put out a big, due to this regulation, we have to change how we communicate our achievements, which is just insane. You're going to set targets for companies, but you can't talk about achieving them. So that to me is just, it's very frustrating from an industry standpoint.
So on that topic,
Yeah.
there's an MP in Ontario, Charlie Angus, who started he wanted to do Bill C-372, I believe. Now there's an environmental group that takes credit for that bill. They take credit for working with Charlie Angus. They take credit for C-59. They take credit. We'll get to that in a second.
Sure.
So Bill C-372 went nowhere. Then these amendments were stuck into Bill C-59. And so green hushing, it's not just oil and gas that impacts. It impacts
that's right.
all businesses.
Any
It's
business.
primarily targeted at oil and gas, it would seem, but it's weird that you don't want to have this fulsome, open conversation. You have a target. It's like saying you're going to go on a really long hike. You're not allowed, and you've never been there before.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to look at a map, a compass, a phone to figure out how you're going to get there.
Right.
You're not allowed to look at any of that.
No, you can't.
But just get there. How are you going to track it? How are you going to quantify it? How are you going to verify it? And as Canadians, we should be proud of the women and men, Indigenous, non-Indigenous, labor, non-labor communities across this country, all provinces and territories, the people and communities and families who make up our energy, mining, food, and forestry production. So why are you going to tell people they can't talk about our achievements? It is absolutely ridiculous. I'm not aware of anywhere else on earth that's done that.
Well, they said
that's a problem.
They did say, I don't remember who said it, probably Charlie Angus or Stephen Guilbeault, but they had said they want to treat the energy sector like big tobacco.
Yeah.
That's their mission. Treat it like big tobacco. It's a bad thing for you.
Well, you can go and look at how long we all lived 100 or 200 or 300 years ago before we had modern energy systems and all of the different materials and all of the different conveniences derived from those modern energy systems.
Yeah.
You can go ask people that are still cooking with unreliable cooking fuels, unreliable electricity, and non-safe cooking fuels.
Yeah.
There's like 1 billion people that don't have reliable electricity. There's like 1 billion people that don't have like natural gas or electricity to cook their food with.
Yeah, that's right.
And you go and ask them how they feel about, how their families' lives and livelihoods, their health and their wellness. Yeah. What do they aspire to?
We're living here in our ivory tower.
We sure are.
You mentioned that leaving countries behind, and I talked about it in here one time before, obviously not with yourself, but so Chris Wright, the energy secretary now for the United States, he was at Liberty Frac and then previously was a tech guru, right? And he wrote a book.
Yes.
I got to see him speak at the Global Oil Convention in North Dakota last year. And actually, it was a company manual, and it was called Bettering Human Lives.
Bettering Human Lives.
Okay, so you're familiar, of course. Yep. And he talks about the 4 pillars of just our society being concrete and steel and all that good stuff. And and his whole mission was to get those countries, to get them off of dung and coal and wood fired to cooking essentials, which is natural gas. And we have all this here in abundance. And we can turn on, we got running water, we got electricity, we've got our energy, we got our fuel, we got all that stuff at the flick of a switch. But now we want to get off it and just go green and leave these countries behind. That's also the part that drives me insane too.
Well, there's one part I'll come back to on the advertising.
Yeah.
And then
we're bouncing around. We're hitting them all. We're hitting them all.
So as Canadians, why would we not throw our full support behind all forms of Canadian energy? It just makes sense. So let's build wind. Let's build solar.
Yeah.
Let's celebrate our record of hydro. We're top 3 in the world for hydroelectricity.
Yeah.
82% of our power grid is coming from non-emitting sources between hydro, wind, nuclear, and solar. Most of that's hydro and nuclear.
Yeah.
We have the world's largest uranium resource.
I know. Yeah.
When you overlay as well democratic suppliers of oil, gas, uranium, forestry, food production, Canada is one of very, very few countries so blessed with such an abundance of all the raw materials and resources that the world is built upon.
It's remarkable.
So let's go and celebrate all forms of Canadian energy. We need to be yes to everything. We need to be honest. 80% of global energy still comes from fossil fuels. It was about 82 to 85% 25 years ago. And in 25 years from now, with growing global population and energy consumption, it could still be 70, 75%. Whatever that number is, again, it should be coming from Canada. You will not hear Bill McKibben, Greenpeace, or CAPE. I want to talk about CAPE next.
Yeah.
You won't hear these groups acknowledge even that Canada's 9th in the world for installed wind power capacity. Yeah. 3rd for hydro. We're even top 20 for solar. We have a massive country. It's not really always that sunny up here. We're really pulling our weight. We really are. And I'd love to talk about clean tech achievements. I'd love to talk about carbon capture. But we can't because of C-59.
We're not allowed,
We're not allowed. I'd love to talk about how the Canadian oil and gas industry was one of the largest investors in clean technology and environmental protection in the country in the past. But we can't talk about it because of C-59. So anyways, we've been legislated against having an open, honest conversation, which is for in everyone's best interest, of course.
Can I stop you real quick?
Yeah.
I want you to continue.
Yeah.
Would you say, so that affects your, like, Canada Action? Does that apply to Canada
it applies
Action?
to everyone. Yep.
Like, certainly doesn't apply to me.
No,
Being just a yapper on
Canada,
a mic.
No, not to you, but you know, my understanding is that for Canada Action, you know, we're just conscientious and careful because we have enough.
Okay. They're coming at you.
Which is fine. And everything we've ever done is sourced, cited, dated, factually accurate from reliable sources. It's very, very important for the brand and for the reputation of everything that we're putting out. So we stand behind, you know, everything we do. And you can go look and zoom in on any of our graphics, any of our content. It is sourced, it is cited, it is dated. Now let me finish with this about advertising. Okay.
Yep.
I mentioned CAPE.
Yes, you did.
So CAPE, the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment, they would like you to think they represent all doctors in the entire country, all healthcare workers. I don't think that's an accurate statement. They have been taking credit for C372 with Charlie Angus. They've been taking credit for C59. They're out there complaining, talking about the end of the world, talking about shutting down Canadian LNG. Like the other environmental groups, they're not talking about the alternative, the reality of substitution. When it doesn't come from Canada, it comes from other countries. How do they compete? And do they fund our healthcare system? No.
Nope.
Qatar does not fund Canadian healthcare. Australia does not fund Canadian healthcare. The United States does not fund Canadian healthcare. Why do you want to give the economic benefits to those countries? It's beyond me. But I will say this. It's very interesting. CAPE ran a big ad campaign in Vancouver asking if creating fear and doom and gloom about LNG and healthcare. Of course, they didn't mention the millions of dollars of direct donations to buy medical diagnostic equipment, to supporting STARS Air Ambulance, to all the things that the industry does across the country and the resource industry does across the country, but also the natural gas industry does in BC, mining, forestry, other resource sectors do in BC for communities and for families. But they, on their ad campaign, on buses and on billboards, they had a photo of an Iranian oil and gas. It was an Iranian oil and gas facility. They had flipped it on its axis so it looked mirror. They doctored the image to add white smoke to it.
Come on.
So they took an image that wasn't from Canada, they photoshopped it, then they put it on their ad campaign to scare Canadians about liquefied natural gas. If you want to talk about deceptive advertising, the group who wants to prevent Canadians from being able to know and speak about our oil and gas industry and resource sectors in general, about the environment, themselves are running photoshopped, falsified, doctored images on their ad campaigns, which are essentially fact-free, and omit and ignore. Of course, do you think they talk about the indigenous communities that are developing LNG? Of course not.
No, they
Are they talking about growing global natural gas demand? Of course not. When these groups were blocking Northern Gateway, were they talking about Alaskan oil tankers on the West Coast just over the horizon? No. When they blocked Energy East, were they talking about Saudi tankers coming into Eastern Canada? No. When they blocked all these pipelines, were they talking about the national interest? Look at what's happening with the US right now. If we had built these pipelines, we would have so much more leverage and so much more control over our own security. We also would not have been forfeiting $100 million a day at one point to the United States on the discount on our oil exports. I would rather that $100 million flows back into our social programs like healthcare.
Yeah, we've been getting in our own way a lot.
Sure.
And the States has built, what, 10 LNG facilities in the last decade?
Australia, so as long as, since Canada's been talking about LNG, Australia became the world's largest producer, exporter, and then the United States became the world's largest exporter.
And there's not that big of a plays in Australia.
Very comparable countries from a democracy standpoint. Australia, obviously. The United States is our neighbor. And so there's in many instances, we sell them natural gas at a discount and they can go and resell it to the world. One interesting fact about pipelines is that when TMX started, when the Trans Mountain expansion started, we started selling more oil to more countries than we ever have. And the discount on our oil is lower than it's been this time of year. At the same time, the re-export of Canadian oil from the Gulf Coast, as our exports to the world went up, re-exports of Canadian oil from the US went down.
Yeah, interesting.
Maximizing the value, capturing the value for ourselves, very important.
Yeah.
Very important.
Oh, no question. Well, and they limit the amount. I think it's in regards to C-48. I know there's the tanker ban, which runs from north of Van up past, but there's a limit to the amount that you can carry crude in a tanker.
The TMX, Trans Mountain, Trans Mountain through the Vancouver port. Those are, I believe, those are Aframax-sized tankers.
Yeah.
And so there's an Aframax, there's a Suezmax, there's different classifications for tankers.
Yes.
And the world's biggest oil producers, when they export oil, like when Saudi Arabia loads a tanker and sends it to New Brunswick, they're sending it on a very large crude carrier, a VLCC, that gets them the best dollars at the lowest cost. And that's where Canada should be also looking at economics. We know we have an affordability crisis. We know we have a social program overcrowding in hospitals, schools. We have a drug crime. We have some of these social issues we have to address. Let's pay our police officers more. Let's hire more. Let's pay our teachers more. Let's build more schools. Let's expand our healthcare programs. Let's buy more diagnostic equipment so that people aren't waiting years for problems to be looked at. Let's invest in Canada.
Yeah.
And natural resources helps us pay the bills.
Yeah, they never want to marry the two, though. Like they never have, at least with this government the last 10 years. They never want to marry the two and talk about the money that comes in, spreading through the communities, that helps the social programs and funding all the sponsoring children and all the money that flows back in.
We have seen about $225 billion of canceled LNG projects.
Yeah, yeah.
It's almost $250 billion.
Yeah.
We have one of the world's largest reserves of natural gas. We're one of the world's largest natural gas producers. And we're one of the only countries that isn't selling it globally.
Yeah, it is
And
insane.
I'll say in the last 10 years, Canada has seen approximately $670 billion of stalled, canceled natural resource projects, mining, oil and gas, pipelines, you name it, all across the board. That's investment, that's job creating investment so that people can ultimately pay tax, put their kids in hockey, maybe go on a holiday, maybe rent a bigger home, buy a home, provide for their families, support our communities, give money to our governments to reinvest back into our social programs. This is very important.
Yeah.
And we need a new approach.
We do need a new approach. And I love your passion, Cody. It's phenomenal. And because I feel the same. So I'm happy that we're both sitting here. But just as you're rattling stats off, people can watch on YouTube and we'll have some slides and you go to Canada Action. I'm just pulling up your Instagram and he just rattled off a stat and I was able to pull it up here right away. But the 670 billion, and lost and canceled. I think Pierre and Ryan Williams and a lot of these MPs have been sharing it as well in the lost. That's in canceled projects. And so, and you do have your sources here. How are you getting all your info? You must just be digging all the time.
All the time. Yeah.
All the time.
I'm reading. I'm reading. I'm talking to people. We are doing a lot of conferences and trade shows, and we're trying to take information that might be too big, might be something that's great that's buried in a big document, and try to make it more accessible.
Make it more accessible.
Make it more right-sized for attention spans on various platforms.
Yeah.
And, so we create some longer form videos that are a couple minutes long. We also have Reels. And we're on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
We're on Instagram. We have multiple accounts on Instagram, on X, on Facebook, one main account on YouTube. That video there of Premier Smith.
Yeah, we're just digging in here now. I went into your reels. Is this the one here?
No, here, just go up a sec.
Oh, right here. It's right here.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
Yeah, so we can,
I mean,
here,
that one there,
let's
that one has 4.1 million views in 4 days.
Do we have the volume on that, Victor? Just so we can...
And what's cool...
No, okay, that's all right.
What's really cool is the total watch time on that is... it's crazy. I don't remember what the total watch time is. It was a crazy number.
Was that? This was just the other day, right?
This is just a couple days ago.
Yeah, that she came out. I think Danielle Smith has just been phenomenal for us for being a champion. And I think there's a small minority in Alberta. And I think there's a small minority that doesn't like what she's doing, but you're going to get that with any government. But she's very, very, very pro-resource, which is what we've wanted for years.
She's pro-resource. I mean, that's really what funds a large portion of our prosperity in Alberta. Mm-hmm. And it's also what allows Alberta to share with the rest of the country. Mm-hmm. And I think the more our fellow Canadians and other provinces can understand those facts and understand more about oil and gas, the more we understand about forestry, the better. Mining, uranium, potash, all these things we have in this country, water, fisheries. The more we all understand each other, the better off we are.
Yeah, no question.
You recently had Premier Eby in BC say, if you're not buying oil and gas from Canada and British Columbia, you're going to get it from Venezuela. And he's talking about the United States. But guess what? That applies to every single oil importer and gas importer on Earth.
Yeah.
We've had Malaysia, the Philippines, Japan, South Korea, Greece, Germany. I think it was Lithuania, the Ukraine. We've had all these countries ask us for our LNG. Right around the time that Russia invaded Ukraine, Minister Guilbeault, said no to the Saguenay Quebec LNG project.
Yep.
We said there was no business case for LNG coming from Canada to Europe. Well, guess what? Germany's been buying it from the US. There's definitely a business case. It's also a longer transit time. So their economics, I would argue, are actually poorer than ours would have been.
Yeah.
If you can build the pipeline to get our vast resources from west to east. And if Alberta and Saskatchewan and BC are supporting social programming and government revenues in other provinces because we're a country, which is important, then maybe we can continue to work on supporting the businesses, the industries, the workers, our fellow Canadians that make up those industries that generate all that wealth that we're sharing everywhere, that we're sharing anyways.
Yeah.
So let's all, work together.
Let's work together. And
let's work together.
For the people, we were just talking and looking up on the site. And if you want information, these slides are phenomenal. I think I mentioned it already. It's just very quick information and factual and to the point with the sources, but also I know you're not going to say it, but this is where, the I love Canadian oil and gas and I love Canada forestry. And I mean, the people can pick up their swag. If there's any time, it's now.
Yeah.
To be buying into the Canada first, because that's all we're hearing. What are your thoughts on Carney and his dropping of the consumer tax, but still taking after the corporate emitters? That's his angle. What do you think?
For everyone listening and watching, go on our website, order some free stickers, and then, check out our online store. If you own property or have a business that's backing onto a highway and you want to put a sign up, we'll put a sign up.
Nice.
We do that. We've got signs all over the country.
And I think we're gonna do a giveaway, maybe a giveaway of some swag. I'll do a preamble after. We'll edit it in, and we'll do a giveaway.
Yeah, we'll do some prize packs.
Okay.
Now, so one important thing about Canada Action is we've always been non-partisan. We believe that 1 + 1 = 2. Rather, I should say we know that 1 + 1 = 2. And the analogy is in politics. It shouldn't matter who you're voting for. We shouldn't allow oil and gas and natural resources to become a wedge issue.
And it is.
Us versus them.
It is.
The environmental groups make it a wedge issue.
Yeah.
They want to shut down Canada. They'd like Canada to import all our oil and gas from other countries. They'd like Japan and China and India and all these countries around the world to import from other countries. They'd like the economic benefits to go to those other countries. That's the consequence of their actions. We think we should keep the money and the economic prosperity in Canada to support our social programs, to, again, hire more police, pay our teachers more, have better healthcare, build more roads, continue to invest in R&D.
Yeah.
Maybe support our veterans and our military, maybe work on our Arctic defense, our Arctic security.
Yeah.
There's many things we could do with those funds, with that money. And I think Canada, after the last 10 years, we have to look at how we're going to be competitive with the world. So if I could invest in the United States, Australia, or Canada, how does Canada stand out? How do we make ourselves stand out? If Japan's talking about wanting LNG from Canada, they haven't really had a warm reception, I would argue. They are a part owner of LNG Canada, so a Japanese company, but I mean, why haven't we got phase 2 going yet? And why, so anyways, there's things there, but now Japan's like, yeah, you know what, we'll invest in the Alaskan LNG project.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there are consequences. Qatar's building a major LNG expansion. Japan's going to buy from them too. Germany's been buying from the United States and Qatar. So when we don't sell our resources to the world, there are consequences. And whoever becomes prime minister, we need to support all Canadian workers in tech, in manufacturing, in logistics, in tourism, in resources.
All of them.
We need to support everyone.
It's discrimination, really, if you think about it.
We need to look at where our energy and our resources come from, how we're all alive, what funds our economy and our exports, and just shake our heads and just give us like we really need like a mental check here on realizing that natural resources pay the bills. Natural resources are our natural economic strength. Oil and gas is going to generate like $1 trillion for our governments from 2000 till 2030.
Yeah.
2032. That pays for all those things we talked about a couple times, which are important. Why wouldn't we want to see our fellow Canadians succeed? Why don't we want Canada to succeed? So, you already have Europe buying LNG from the United States. They don't have an industrial carbon tax.
Nope.
Qatar doesn't have an industrial carbon tax. Is that going to make us competitive? I don't know. But whoever, I would argue, no.
No, well, and
I would say we need to look at making life more affordable for Canadians. We need to really, truly let the world know we're open for business. We need to really, truly look after our own security and our military. And I think we have a larger role to play in the world if we choose to step up. But
we do.
These
no question.
roadblocks and barriers to new job creating investment, even C59, there's clean tech companies talking about how this is going to potentially chill investment because they can't go and talk about what their goals and what they're doing. It's the wrong message.
It is the wrong message.
You can't talk about it.
They're all about censorship.
We're going to add more barriers. We're going to, ban tankers, even though we need to get oil to Asia. Like there's so many different things. The No More Pipelines bill, C69.
C69, yeah.
We were out very much against that. And since that passed, there's a lot of stuff that hasn't got built.
Squashed everything.
Right? So you can kind of see, so we need a new approach and we have to recognize our natural resource industry, our oil and gas industry for what it is.
Yep.
A major champion of our country and a major champion of our quality of life, a contributor.
I was just
something
reminded,
that's needed, that's necessary, that's fundamental to our basic needs as Canadians, our families, something that's fundamental to our economic security and prosperity is oil and gas and all of our natural resources. We need to recognize that and get out of our own way.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%, and I hope people are listening. I think I mentioned to you before I had I got a little shake going on. I mentioned before I did a podcast. There we go. I was on a maritime podcast.
Yep.
And the guys are called Elevate. Got a massive following. I did a podcast with them. I think it's got like 60,000 views or something, but that's just their channel. They've got, but they're maritimers.
Yep.
They wanted me to come on to kind of help explain because he did say in the Maritimes, it really seems like there's a lot of people that are scared of like, not necessarily, I was trying to approach it as, our global emissions, we account for 1.5 to 1.8%, depending which slide or which data you're getting. our emissions are not the problem on a global scale. But he mentioned it went a little more deep rooted there. Like they've had a couple of projects, and you tell me if you're familiar or not, but there's a gold mine out there. The Sydney tar ponds. There's been a couple of incidents. And so there's groups out there that are really adverse to resource projects. And so anytime like Tim Houston came out recently, right? And he's saying, Energy East, Quebec, get out of our way. We're going pro-resource. But there are a lot of groups there, and I can't say whether or not they're tied to anything U.S., but from what Reg was telling me at the Elevate podcast was there's large groups of people out there that are afraid of projects. How familiar are you with any resource plays or anything off the East Coast?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. I would say what Premier Houston did was leadership.
Yeah.
And what Premier Eby was saying was leadership. And what Daniel Smith's been saying is leadership.
Yeah.
Premier Ford's been saying leadership. Premier Moe. Premier Legault was even talking about.
Yeah, that's a wild one.
Maybe we should be building Saguenay LNG, and maybe we should be talking about pipelines. I would say right now is the time for everyone to come together. I don't think it's helpful to be talking about the past.
No.
The past is gone.
You're right. Yeah. So
I don't think it's helpful to talk about transfer payments.
Yeah, equalization.
I don't,
well, it's not something we can.
Told you so.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not going to get something
built.
built.
It doesn't help. It's like name
that doesn't
calling.
help us in an hour from now. That's backwards looking. We got to be forwards looking.
Yeah.
There's a lot of projects canceled or stalled. I like what Premier Eby did, fast tracking these 18 projects in BC.
Yeah.
Most of those projects were already in advanced stages of their development, of their approvals. So it sounds good. It is good, but I think we need to go deeper. I think every province and territory needs to look at how we can trade with each other better, how we can all expedite projects, and how we can actually get to work and stop talking about, the need to do this.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's like mid-March now. This tariff stuff's been ongoing for a while.
Over 100 days.
We don't have anything that's really been announced on what we're doing at a national level from a federal government standpoint.
No.
So let's expand Trans Mountain again. The Trans Mountain expansion will expand.
Yeah, expand.
Let's talk about Northern Gateway.
Northern Gateway would be a big one.
Let's get the Indigenous communities that support these projects involved from the get-go. Let's talk about more uranium mining, more potash. There's a new potash mine in Manitoba.
There is a new potash mine there.
Huge economic benefits to the communities there. There's all of these great partnerships with Indigenous communities in mining and power transmission. We need pipelines, power lines, railways, ports, and roads to trade with the world and to develop more of the resources we have. Roads are important if you're talking about the Ring of Fire, Northern Ontario.
Ring of Fire, that comes up a lot. It does come up a lot.
Very important. And from even look at what's been happening with the BC aquaculture industry. They're getting shut down. And in the past, protests from Suzuki Foundation, etc., a lot of fact-free protests against aquaculture, what's happened is the investment has simply gone into Alaska.
Yeah, it's a shame.
So it's a shame. It's a shame.
Yep.
It's a shame for growing our own high-quality proteins to feed growing demand for fish. It's a shame for the Indigenous communities that are very involved or own or participate in a lot of those aquaculture projects. And it's the same conversation in every province and territory. Let's get our resources to market. Let's support ourselves. Let's reinforce our economic prosperity. Let's take control of our economic security. We need those things. Pipelines, power lines, railways, ports, and roads.
Yeah.
And, we have to do it. We can't waste any more time. So even Canada, there was a story recently, Canada's still importing oil from Russia.
Yeah, I read that. And a lot of Canadians would have no clue.
No clue. And I would actually argue, I read it somewhere and I really liked the way it was phrased, is that our energy infrastructure is actually deficient because we are beholden to a single customer for most of our oil and natural gas exports up until Trans Mountain. Still, though, we're sending most of it to the U.S. We're handcuffed.
Yeah.
We also do not have the ability to get Canadian oil and gas to Eastern Canada without going through the United States. We also do not have the ability to trade with our trading partners and allies globally. And it's been getting re-exported from the United States.
Yeah.
So we need, and I mean, our ports don't actually fare that well in global rankings from a delay and an efficiency standpoint.
No, they don't.
We have port issues. We have pipeline bottlenecks. We are importing $20 billion or something. I don't know what it was last year, but like go back to 2000. Let's say we've imported $250 billion of oil into Canada. But we actually have the world's largest reserve of oil of democratic countries in the world.
Yeah.
And third largest of all countries. So
the leader should always have been touting us.
It is deficient.
Yeah.
It is a problem. We can't get oil from Alberta to New Brunswick for refining and also for exporting. It is a problem.
It is a problem.
And Canada does have, I think, 17 operating refineries. We are a net exporter of oil and refined products. But it still doesn't mean that the United States isn't selling into Ontario and selling into the Atlantic. And, you know, all of a sudden, like, do we really have the best leverage? Like, we cut off exports. If we cut off energy exports to the United States, and then they're like, okay, we're going to cut off energy exports into Ontario.
Yeah.
Well, that's not going to work. So we got to look at that.
We do. Yeah. We've got to be careful. And
be careful.
I believe strongly that this tariff war is 100% about energy independence for the United States. And that's the one he's kind of wielding. He doesn't talk about it a lot, if you notice, Trump, right?
Yeah. We have to pull our weight.
Yeah.
We have to pull our weight, protect ourselves, take care of the Arctic. There's many things we got to do. We got to find a diplomatic solution with the United States, and we cannot forget this. This needs to be etched into our national psyche so that in 5 years from now, we are celebrating the commissioning of pipeline infrastructure projects that will reduce the oil we're importing in the East, making Canada more energy secure, recycling the economic benefits within our country rather than buying oil from Saudi Arabia that came on a tanker. Let's buy oil from Alberta that came on a pipeline, and making ourselves more secure, more prosperous. We need to be celebrating those projects in 3 to 5 years from now.
Full stop.
There's no reason why, if we work together and make this a priority, it can't be done on an expedited time frame.
Yep. I agree with you.
Because it is a nation-building, nation-securing project that we're talking about. This is a wake-up call.
And I'm not even sure that, I don't want to keep going back to the Maritimes where you're just mentioning the tankers. I'm not even sure that people out there realize fully that all their products come on these massive super tankers from Saudi Arabia and Venezuela. I don't think they realize it. And we're not slagging Irving. This is out of their control, but not entirely. But, you know, they have said, actually, Irving has said they're open to a pipeline prior, like
when Energy East was East was in the news. So the environmental groups were protesting Energy East. They were not protesting the Saudi tankers that were arriving in port to unload.
That's my point.
So that's the biggest contrast, I think. And at that time, it was said that that if the pipeline got built, there would be major investments in refining. To take the oil that came on the pipeline so that more Canadians could access it. And yes, we would also export some. Because we produce more oil than we need. And oil is a massive, massive, massive wealth generator for our nation. Every single Canadian, whether they like it or not, benefits from Canadian oil and benefits from Canadian natural gas.
Yeah, I've been shouting at the top of my lungs to all my Ontario friends. That's where I grew up. I've been out here 25 years, but I've been saying it to them forever, and they all kind of nod and say, yeah. But I'm like, I always try to say, I don't think you realize how it's helping you and affecting you. I don't think they realize it fully either.
Well, there was research done by the Macdonald-Laurier Institute that said that approximately 45% of Canada's manufacturing output was tied to our natural resource sector. So you want to talk about exports, 50%. Manufacturing output on that study, 45%. You want to talk about jobs, millions of jobs. Government revenues, $1 trillion from oil and gas alone over a couple decades, over 3 decades.
It's insane.
And the potential, like, as Canadians, let's aspire to be all that we can be. So if the world's using 90 million barrels of oil a day in 2050, which is very likely, instead of just producing 5, why don't we try to produce 7? Why don't we try to produce 10?
Yeah, let's go the other way. Why are we going backwards?
Let's grow our market share.
Yeah.
Let's make more cars. Let's sell more oil. Let's bring in more tourists.
Mm-hmm.
Let's hire more police officers. Let's hire more teachers. Let's build more hospitals. Let's do more of everything to make this country the most prosperous country on earth, to make this country the most safe, secure, affordable country on earth for our families.
Yeah.
Let's do all of that. Why would we not aspire to that? A bunch of protesters want to glue themselves to the concrete with petroleum-based glue because they don't want us to build an Energy East pipeline.
Throwing stuff on the
And they don't
Mona
want to
Lisa.
talk about Saudi tankers or Alaskan tankers or LNG in the U.S. or LNG from Qatar. I mean,
I know.
it's ridiculous.
It's preposterous.
If you want to talk about global anything, then let's talk about global everything. Doesn't come from Canada. It comes from somewhere else. Full stop.
Full stop.
Full stop. National Bank had a chart I saw that said that Canadian emissions as a share of the total world's emissions are the same approximately today as they were in approximately 1910.
Right? Yeah, I actually went back and looked at our emissions. Even I was trying to compare like Trudeau's years to Harper's years. It's hardly moved a blip.
And we can't talk about it because of C-59.
Not allowed.
But in the U.S., there was a study that said that U.S. LNG will help reduce global emissions because it will help replace higher emitting forms of energy.
Cuts it in half, 50%.
So let's think about that as it pertains to Canada, where liquefying the LNG uses less energy because we're colder.
Yeah.
The shipping, I would argue, because the transit time from BC to Asia is approximately 8 days, whereas the U.S. from the Gulf Coast, it's going to be more like 12, 13. Simply having a lower transit time, a shorter route, means less energy used in shipping. Therefore, one could argue that there'd be lower emissions.
Lower emissions, maybe a business case.
We got to be careful with C-59, of course. We don't want to talk about anything that we're actually doing
we're not allowed.
or any of our potential. But we have to aspire to be more. We can, we should, and we have to take a new approach.
Yep.
So support all forms of Canadian energy. Pragmatism must rule.
I'm with you, buddy. Just when you were wheeling around, we were talking about protesters. Let's paint a scenario. Pierre gets in. I think they were saying on Global News that the writ was going to drop sometime this weekend. There might be an election as early as April 28th. So we have an election, which is immediate. So it's not a lot of time for Canadians to rally. But what do you foresee? Let's call it a Pierre win.
Yep.
Okay. Pierre gets it. I'm hoping for a super majority. Let's just be clear on this. Everybody's got to get out and vote because he's pro-resources. So I'm hoping super majority. But let's say he gets in. How fast do you think these eco-warrior environmentalist groups, how fast do you think they're going to mobilize to try to squash this at every turn? You've come against them for a long time.
Yep.
How organized are they?
Oh, they're very well organized. They're very well organized. And I mean, look at what Greta Thunberg's been doing. So Greta Thunberg's been protesting fossil fuels.
Yep.
She said we were all going to die. Everyone's still alive. There's a lot of these proclamations that are made, these doomsday apocalyptic scenarios. I think people are tired of it. People are like,
I think they are too.
It's like the person who cried wolf too many times. It doesn't mean we don't have to also think about the environment. Of course we do, and I would argue as Canadians we do, and we are, and we're pulling our weight, even more than our weight. But again, C-59, can't talk about it. So I would just say that we have a 15-year history to look back at how environmental groups have fought to block every single major investment in Canadian resources. They want to block mining. They want to block hydro. Like, they're against Site C. They're against nuclear. They're against oil and gas. They're against everything.
And are they all Canadians? Like, are they all, or do you know?
I mean, I saw news where someone was from the U.S. that was up here blocking forestry.
Okay.
You know, Vivian Krause has done a lot of great research.
Yeah.
People can go look at that.
Yeah, they should. Yeah, it's phenomenal. Yeah.
You know, Greenpeace, I mean, I think Greenpeace was started in Vancouver.
Yeah, I
think
so too.
Like, but it's just regardless of where you're from, you're not looking at you're not sharing the whole story with people.
You're not.
You're misleading Canadians if you're protesting this, saying we could go 100% wind and solar tomorrow, which we can't. I mean, and like look at renewable adoption the last 15 years. It hasn't replaced fossil fuels. It's only added to meet growing energy demand.
Augmented by fossil fuels.
So 80% of the global energy is fossil fuels. As Canadians, let's just be pragmatic about it.
Yeah, it's okay.
But those groups, they already are. I mean, well, they've been protesting other issues in the Middle East. You know, Greta Thunberg, I mean, you know, you go look at what Greta Thunberg's been doing, you know.
Yeah, I haven't looked.
So a lot of those groups
recently,
have been doing the same stuff. And they're gonna protest everything. I mean, I've done
just what they do.
Numerous debates with people in BC that are. I debated a guy who was sitting in a tree trying to block Trans Mountain. He didn't have a lot to say that was factual. His whole argument was doomsday. Doomsday apocalypse.
Yeah, that's kind of how
he could not account for the fact that there's Alaskan tankers on the West Coast that are just go out there and look.
Yeah, just go take a look. They're there. Yeah.
And, you know, what happens if Canada doesn't participate, doesn't produce, doesn't export? And also just this fundamental reality of energy and physics. I mean, Vaclav Smil, right? Read a Vaclav Smil book. Right?
Yep.
Talk about the 4 pillars of civilization like we were talking about before, how things are made, how things work, where money comes from. It doesn't grow on trees and energy doesn't come from a light switch.
Yeah.
And gas for your car does not come from the gas station. It's not made in the gas station, and electric vehicles are only made possible thanks to mining, thanks to oil and natural gas, advanced petrochemicals that make them light enough with the advanced weight with the heavy weight of the batteries to even be on the roads. Plus, you got to talk about particulate emissions from the tires, from the heavier weight. There's so many more things to talk about. So those groups we've talked about, unfortunately, I worry they're going to continue to mislead and divide. They're
always going to
divisive.
be there.
They're divisive, though. They're not talking about what we can do together. They're talking about all the things we can't do.
It's suppressed.
No hydro, no nuclear, no oil and gas. The only thing they like is wind and solar. We don't make wind panels. We don't make solar panels or wind turbine components for in large part in Canada. We don't have that manufacturing base.
Yeah.
I'm all for building that manufacturing base. But we got to advance everything at the same time. Then there's a larger pie. Then we can all have bigger pieces.
Well, we've got the minerals. I mean, if we want to talk going renewables, we've
Ring
got
of Fire,
them. Uranium.
We've got the minerals.
Lithium.
So they're going to try to they'll try to obstruct and delay.
Yeah, it's just what they do.
I think we have a long 15-year track record to look at how they'll do it, what they'll say, the fear, the nonsense, the disinformation, the misdirection that they're going to use. And we have to remember that they're trying to divide us. We're stronger together. We can all support all forms of Canadian energy in a pragmatic fashion. That you know, having that informed conversation, and we can simply ignore them.
Sure.
And ultimately, we need the Indigenous communities that are leading these LNG projects out there speaking. We need labor.
Well, the thing is, they do speak up, but they don't get the podium time on a national scale, like the mainstream. They do speak up, but you have to dig.
They do. They're doing more.
They're doing it.
We try to amplify as much as we can.
Yeah, we have to amplify it for
really,
them, though.
Yeah, and it's also really important that we're all respectful.
Yeah.
We need to all be respectful. We need to all, you know, learn more about our history as a country, be respectful, support the Indigenous communities trying to develop their resources and also benefit, support labor, non-labor, territories, provinces, East Coast, West Coast, North Coast. We can all really work together, forward-looking.
Yeah.
One thing I like to tell people is when you're online and someone challenges you and you respond with a fact, and all of a sudden it's this whataboutism. And they ignore the answer and they move on to something else.
Yeah.
It's like you're never going to win. You don't necessarily need to win.
Endless cycle.
It's an endless cycle of negativity, doom, and misdirection. Ultimately, nowadays, you honestly have to ask yourself if you're talking to someone who's in Canada, if you're talking to someone who's even a real person, and try to keep your glass half full, not half empty.
Yeah.
Abundance mindset is going to help Canada get where we need to go. We need to get rid of that scarcity mindset, that negative mindset, that know everything mindset.
Yeah, it's time. It's been a long time now. It's enough.
Say what you want to say, Go online, look at Canada Action stuff, share it, start conversations.
Yeah, share it. Yep.
And if you have someone that you don't agree with, be respectful and just agree to disagree and move on.
I'm a big proponent of that myself.
Totally.
When I get in debates with people, like I'm open. Everybody's got their own core beliefs and values. Try to sway them with some facts. And when they start coming back with the non-factual, that's when it's over. Good day to you, sir. Yeah.
Whataboutism.
Yeah. I just one more thing. Are you familiar? You must be. But are you familiar with the CO2 Coalition? Are you familiar with that group or no?
No.
Okay. So CO2 Coalition is a group of scientists, geologists, engineers. They're out of the States, and they've taken it upon themselves they dig into geology, the Earth's climate. These are meteorologists, and they study weather patterns. And they're all about debunking, but staying out of the political. They've done. I'm going to try to get to his name is Gregory Wrightstone. I'm trying to get him on the show.
Cool.
But he just talks in facts. And then if you say, well, why do you think your government is? He won't go there. They don't go there. Yeah. They try to stay out of the political. But here's the facts. And if people can look it up, there's an app. It's a free app. And it's called, do I have my shades on here? I probably have it up because they bring it up. It's meant for, here it is here. Inconvenient facts, 64 inconvenient facts. And all it is just slides. There's slides, and it's meant for people. If you find yourself in a debate live with someone, there are slides with the source, and it's, here was the Earth's temperature 6,100 years ago. These are your interglacial periods, and here's why we need more CO2. But it's all factual. It's all data, but put onto a nice little spreadsheet. And there's 64 slides. It's really cool. People should check it out. They're not big on like Instagram or anything like that yet, but they do have a website, and they have like 1 million members.
Well, the more
lots of good videos,
and the more we learn about
just learning
history,
our
country, geology, all these different systems, our economy. The more we learn, and the more open we are to maybe other viewpoints that we didn't necessarily already have or see or agree with, the better off we're going to become. The more informed we're going to be, the more civil we're going to be, the more respectful we're going to be, the more unified we're going to be as a country. We have to bring Canadians together.
Time is now.
Time is now. I mean, and honestly, the time was 2010. The time was 2010
fair.
With KXL, with
that was a turning point.
Gateway, with Energy East, with $224 billion of LNG projects that are canceled or stalled, with mining, with forestry, with ag. The time is now to really play to our strengths and bake a bigger pie. Everyone gets a bigger piece. Every Canadian benefits. And we then become an even more attractive place to attract more investment in tech and logistics. I mean, look at, you want to talk about the state of our economy, go and look at what the CEO of Shopify, Toby.
Oh, I got no idea. What?
Toby,
no
he's
idea.
Great he's great on X, sharing his thoughts and his opinions about the economy.
I don't follow him.
And
okay.
he's a great, like, you want to
Good
talk
source.
about someone in tech, like Shopify would be Canada's biggest tech champion.
Yeah, no question. Yeah.
We have a lot of these tech startups that get bought, a lot of the brain drain.
Right. Yeah.
Again, talking about competitiveness. If California has, no snow and lower taxes, we got to compete. We got to think about those things at least. We can't just pretend they don't exist.
Yeah.
And so, but what Toby from Shopify has been out there saying is that time for a new approach. We got to make Canada more competitive to attract more investment, to keep more companies here, to grow our own tech ecosystem, to generate more wealth for our governments and Canadian families, to improve our social programs, to make everything better for everyone. That's a spot. We can do it.
We can do it.
We can do it.
Yeah.
He's a follow him on X.
Oh, I'm going to check him out. Well, it's like you say, knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power.
Yeah, that's true.
Knowledge is power.
I think we smashed on it pretty good, buddy.
Cool.
Did you feel like you got everything off your chest?
For
everything
sure.
you want to get out there?
I
feel good. I feel good about that one.
I feel great. Just everyone listening, just join the conversation.
Yeah.
Live in abundance. The glass is half full.
Yeah.
Don't debate, argue with people online. Share and spread the positivity and spread the love, and just Stay out of that negativity. They might not be from Canada. They might not even be a real person.
That's
you
the
know,
other thing.
getting into comment wars.
Yeah, it's a waste of time. Yeah.
Getting into comment wars is a waste of time. But go get a shirt. Go get a shirt. I'm gonna get you some prize packs. I'll get you I'll get you a promo code as well, so you can let everyone know.
Okay.
For a discount. Go order some free stickers. If you own a business and you want bumper stickers on your fleet, we'll do it. If you want to put a poster in your office, we'll do it. You want to get co-branded merch for your company, we'll do it.
Nice. Now's the time.
Any and all opportunities to share that positive message that we love and we must support the women and men who make up our oil and gas, energy, hydro, mining, forestry, family farms, fisheries, nuclear power, tech and generation, uranium, potash, you name it. We are so fortunate in Canada to have these resources.
Yeah.
So it's time to dream and think bigger and actually put the work in to make it happen. We can do it in the times now.
We can. Good way to end it, buddy.
That is, man.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Well done.